Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. North and South America. This is Fiveum here with facts. The year is 1948 and America is glowing in its victory in World War II. We have saved democracy the world over, and what better way to celebrate than with a presidential election? In one corner, representing the Democratic Party, we have Harry S. Truman. What does the S stand for? Nobody knows. In the other corner, we have Thomas Dewey, representing the Republican Party. And it looks like he has it in the bag. Yes, everybody who's anybody agrees that Thomas Dewey has it in the bag. It's going to seem that Dewey defeats Truman. And hang on, what's this? Holy moly, it's an upset. Harry Truman has won. Truman defeats Dewey? Why, this is impossible. Let's take a look at the map. Alright, we can see the electoral map. Well, typical, the Northeast has gone for the Republican. And the solid South has gone for the Democrat. Wait a second. Strong Thurman. What the heck is going on in Dixieland? Hello and welcome to Facts Fiveum. I am Facts Fiveum, your host, here to give you 1/5 of your recommended daily dose of facts. Today we will be discussing a trend that I've noticed throughout American history, a trend that really bugs me, a trend of what I like to call Southern fried bellyaching. Basically, it's the trend of conservative Dixie elites who love to act like they're the victims of being oppressed, even when they're the aggressors, almost acting like they're defenders of some sort of individual liberty, when really they're just defending their right to take liberties away from others. Sometimes, if they really want to piss me off, they'll act like they're just the will of the people or the common man, the biggest landowners in the county or the state, general area, acting like they're just the salt of the earth, common Joe Schmo, who hates seeing his rights being taken away by, I don't know, maybe it's the blacks, maybe it's the feds, maybe it's even their own state, the gays, if it's in more modern times. Well, you get the idea. These guys who love to act like they're the will of the people, when really, they just want to take everyone else's rights and make everyone else miserable. And now that we're here, I think it's time to take a look at this party platform. It's a relatively short platform, but, well, honestly, how do I word this properly? It embodies some good old-fashioned southern fried bellyaching like nothing ever could. Let's read it together, shall we? Platform of the States' Rights Democratic Party. You know, let's see it. I know it's southern type thing, but I'm better at a mid-Atlantic accent, so I'll do my mock mid-Atlantic voice. August 14th, 1948. Unanimously accepted at Oklahoma City, August 14th, 1948. We believe that the Constitution of the United States is the greatest charter of human liberty ever conceived by the mind of man. We oppose all efforts to invade or destroy the rights guaranteed by it to every citizen of this republic. We stand for social and economic justice, which we believe can be guaranteed to all citizens only through a strict adherence to our Constitution and the avoidance of any invasion or destruction of the constitutional rights of the states and individuals. We oppose the totalitarian... Okay, wait. We oppose the... Give me a second, okay. We oppose the totalitarian, centralized bureaucratic government and police nation called for by the platforms adopted by the Democratic and Republican conventions. Like, this is the shit I mean. I mean, the Democratic and even to an extent probably the Republican Party, I don't know off the top of my head, but like, they were basically like, hey, we should stop with the segregation, it's really not a good look, and the Southern boys were like, this is totalitarian police state, this is a threat to the Constitution, oh, woe is me, oh, I mean, like, this right here, this shit, this is the mindset of Southern fried bellyache I'm talking about here. Oh, God. I know it's a pretty short platform, I'm pretty sure it doesn't get much better than that, but let's check. Okay, breathe in and out. We stand for the segregation of the races and the racial integrity of each race, the constitutional right to choose one's associates, to accept private employment without governmental interference, and to earn one's living in any lawful way. I don't know if that counts as constitutional constitutional. Like, I'll be honest, I'm no constitution scholar. Like, I can understand that being a philosophy of one's life or one's personal legal philosophy, but I don't really know where this comes in the Constitution. I guess one could argue that the First Amendment would hypothetically allow someone to choose their own associates, but I'm not really sure about the other parts. Especially because, like, I remember reading about how in the early days of the Republic, the idea of working for somebody instead of having your own shop or your own farm was seen as demeaning, but times change. We oppose the elimination of segregation, the repeal of miscegnation statutes, and I believe that's fancy legal talk for laws that prohibit interracial marriage, the control of private employment by federal bureaucracies called for by the misnamed Civil Rights Program. We favor home rule, local self-government, and a minimum interference with individual rights. And this is the thing that I want to talk about, too. When they say individual rights, they mostly mean just the right of the individual to deprive someone else of their rights. It's even similar to the slavery day. It was like, what? No slavery? That's an infringement on my property rights. And in this case, their property rights were the rights to deprive somebody else of their, well, right to live, I guess. We oppose and condemn the action of the Democratic Convention in sponsoring a civil rights program calling for the elimination of segregation, social equality by federal fiat, regulations of private employment practices, voting, and local law enforcement. I'll be completely honest, I don't know if the Democratic National Committee or Convention part, DNC, whatever you call it, if they called for all of these as much as they called just for kind of a bland civil rights vague concept thingy. But at the same time, you can see that in this case the Southern Fried Bellyachers are finding any sort of remote challenge to their way of life to be a threat to absolutely everything, a threat to life, a threat to the Constitution, a threat to the country that they claim to hold near and dear. We affirm that the effective enforcement of such a program would be utterly destructive of the social, economic, and political life. Okay, I know this is 1948, but they didn't use a fucking Oxford comma. Bunch of heathens, I tell you. Social, economic, and political life of the Southern people, and of other localities in which there may be differences in race, creed, or national origin in appreciable numbers. I'll be honest, I did find this part kind of funny just because, the Southern people and maybe other areas where there might be more than one race. But I think that there's a bit of a slip right here. Maybe it's a type of slip of the tongue. Basically, they make it quite clear that they only care about their own concerns and not the concerns of the nation as a whole. Now, granted, I can understand one arguing that it's your job as a representative to represent your constituents only and not the nation of a whole, but at the same time, I find it to be a bit insulting where they'll talk about earlier, like the importance of, say, individual rights and, can be guaranteed to all citizens, and then later be like, oh yeah, the Southern people are most at risk if you give people civil rights. Now, granted, considering the way that these old school Dixiecrats basically disenfranchised African Americans and poor whites, the only people who were voting were the better off whites who could afford to pay the poll tax. Now, granted, the exact rules varied from state to state, but generally, if you could afford to pay the poll tax, you were probably not hurting for anything. We stand for the check and balances. Check and balances. Maybe it's just a 1948 grammar thing. I always remember in school they were called the checks and balances. Checks and balances. Checks. Maybe check and balances was just the way you used the grammar in 1948. Provided by the three departments of our government. We oppose the usurpation of legislative functions by the executive and judicial departments. We unreservedly condemn the effort to establish in the United States a police nation. This is the best part. They're basically saying that we don't want a police state, but at the same time, if you look at the way they conducted law and order back then, especially in the Dixie areas, some of you might be familiar with how, I know this is a bit later, but in the 1960s, the Dixie police would basically just run amok attacking people who they so much as accused of being civil rights agitators. And at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if it was similar back then, just the Dixie cops running around, going mad, having the near absolute authority to inflict harm upon people who they so much as thought were messing with the social order. And in this case, it's an interesting case of protection. They're like, oh my god, they're going to force us to live under a police state. Now, cops, you better be on the lookout for a black guy who might look funny at a white woman.
You better be on lookout. And that's the thing. It's this type of thing that, well, you see it in right-wing populism all the time. It's this general idea of that we give the state all this authority. It's this behemoth apparatus. And they'll talk small government, but really they just don't want the behemoth of the state to use its authority on them. They want the authority to be used on other people. Crush my foes under the heel of the state, but leave me be. We demand that there be returned to the people we demand that there be returned to the people to whom of right they belong those powers needed for the preservation of human rights and the discharge of our responsibility as Democrats for human welfare. So since it's Democrats with a small d, I presume, I don't know if they're referring to the party or if they just mean the definition of, like, someone who believes in democracy. We oppose a denial of those by political parties, a barter or sale of those rights by a political convention, as well as any invasion or violation of those rights by the federal government. So, as we can see, the rights that they're referring to are basically, the rights to take away the rights of others. The right to deny people service or anything based on their race. The right to, send the police to violently enforce an unjust social order. And, best part, we call upon all Democrats, with a big D this time, and upon all other loyal Americans who are opposed to totalitarianism at home and abroad to unite with us in ignominiously defeating Harry S. Truman, Thomas E. Dewey, and every other candidate for public office who would establish a police nation in the U.S. of A. And, I'm just going to read the last part now, just to get it out of the way. We therefore urge that this convention endorse the candidacies of J. Strom Thurmond and Fielding H. Wright for President and Vice President, respectively, of the United States of America. And this is the shit I'm talking about, alright? They're basically like, oh my god, they want to give other people rights. This is totalitarianism. This is 1984. Well, I guess 1984 wasn't actually written yet. This is exactly how Nazi Germany got started. I gotta do a better voice. Yeah, whatever. I really can't voice just how annoying this is. I thought I would have a better thing going, but you know what? I'm just gonna roll with this. Because that's the real issue here, is the fact that any attempt to give someone else rights is met by these Southern Fried Bellyachers as some sort of attempt to build a literal totalitarian police state against the good, God-fearing, salt-of-the-earth people, and also we might just be the biggest landowners and employers, but ignore that part, please. It's irksome, it's angering, and it's good old-fashioned Southern Fried Bellyaching. Until next time, I'm Fiveum, giving you 1/5 of your daily dose of facts, and this has been Southern Fried Bellyaching.